What has happened?
Okay, so essentially, they have revoked the licenses of 5 banks: Construction Bank, Sovereign Bank, Beige Bank, Yuni Bank, and the Royal Bank. And a newly formed bank, Construction Bank Ghana Limited, has taken over the good assets and liabilities of these 5 banks I just mentioned.
Awesome. So they've revoked the licenses. That
Indeed.
means that these banks don't exist anymore.
They cease to exist.
They cease to exist.
Exactly.
So this morning, there's no Beige Bank, there's no Royal Bank, there's no Uni Bank, there's no Construction Bank, there's no Sovereign Bank. We'll be going to their branches this morning to find out what is happening there. It's about 8 a.m. Well, it's a minute after 8.
Okay.
So you expect that banking business should be beginning by now.
Yes.
For those banks that open officially at 8, some do at 9. But before that, we need to understand how we got here. And the governor of the Bank of Ghana was very specific with what happened with these banks that caused where we are now. So we'll take the banks one by one, because it's only fair that we deal with them individually. Though, from our understanding, Philip, it looks like there are 2 main categories of issues here.
Yeah. Okay, so let me start from the top. In 2016, the Bank of Ghana conducted what they call AQR, Asset Quality Review. Essentially, they're looking at the assets, e.g. loans, your investments in securities of banks in Ghana. And they realized that a number of banks were severely undercapitalized. And undercapitalized simply means your capital on hand is not enough to absorb shocks or losses that may fall on you in the course of your operations.
Where the capital is money. So you don't have enough money
on hand
so that if, for instance, all your depositors want to come and take money, you can give it to them immediately.
Exactly. If you go to other jurisdictions such as UK, US, they call it stress testing. So they put banks under some scenarios. And so what if right now all your depositors come for your money? What if right now all your loans go bad? What will happen? You are supposed to stand firm even in the most extreme or severe of scenarios. So when Bank of Ghana did this in 2016, they found out that a number of banks were in shambles or were in a poor state, and asked them to submit recapitalization plans or turnaround plans to the Bank of Ghana. Some of them...
And what would those recapitalization plans be?
Well, you are going to demonstrate to the Bank of Ghana how you are going to recapitalize, inject fresh capital, turn around your operations, recover your non-performing loans, your bad debt, and streamline your operations in a way that you are no longer going to be enduring or encountering non-performing loans, because that's a key issue in this discussion.
You've said that a lot. So non-performing loans are loans that are out there that people are basically not paying
back. Either interest, principal, or a combination of both interest and principal. And if you look at financial documents, research, literature, the number they use is mostly 90 days plus. So beyond 90 days, if a customer, then your DASIC is not making payments, then your loan is non-performing. So Bank of Ghana asked these people to submit these plans to them. And some of them, as it was indicated in the press release, weren't enough or sufficient for the Bank of Ghana. So you realize that last year, UT Bank, Capital Bank, started this trend, where GCB Bank purchased and assumed the assets and liabilities. Then we had Yuni Bank coming also. Then we had a bank like Sovereign Bank, which was appointed an advisor because there were certain issues that the Bank of Ghana detected in its operations. So that's from the top, 2016. The AQR more or less set it all off, the asset quality review.
Philip, I'll come to you to go further on this, but let me say a good morning to Ken Thompson. He's here with us, head of Dalex Finance. Mr. Thompson, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good to see you.
Yourself?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So I would ask that you just give us a minute. We just want to run through, for the sake of those who may not have listened to the entire speech yesterday, we want to run through what has happened so that we come to you with the analysis. So Philip, let's go ahead. We're going to take it one bank after the other, right? Yeah.
Okay. So in this press release, they put all the 5 banks. What exactly were these problems in the banks? There's an addition of documents in this press release where they go in depth in each bank. Very long one. But I'll take the part where the governor in his press release put some of them together to highlight their problems. So let me start with this one. So Yuni Bank and Royal Bank were identified during the AQR updates, that's the asset quality review in 2016 exercise, to be significantly undercapitalized. I mentioned that. The 2 banks subsequently submitted capital restoration plans to the Bank of Ghana. These plans, however, yielded no success in returning the banks to solvency and compliance with prudential requirements. The official administrator appointed for Yuni Bank in March 2018 has found that the bank is beyond rehabilitation. Shareholders, related and connected parties had taken amounts totaling 3.7 billion Ghana cedis, which were neither granted through the normal credit delivery process.
You know what, Philip?
Yes.
Let's hear the governor.
Sure.
Laying out how you lay it out now.
Okay.
And then we'll come back.
Sure. Okay.
Yuni Bank and Royal Bank were identified during the AQR update exercise in 2016 to be significantly undercapitalized. The two banks subsequently submitted capital restoration plans to the Bank of Ghana. These plans, however, yielded no success in returning the banks to solvency and compliance with prudential requirements. The official administrator appointed for Yuni Bank in March 2018 has found that the bank is beyond rehabilitation. Shareholders, related and connected parties had taken amounts totaling 3.7 billion cedis, which were neither granted through the normal credit delivery process nor reported as part of the bank's loan portfolio. In addition, amounts totaling 1.6 billion had been granted to shareholders, related and connected parties in the form of loans and advances without due process and in breach of relevant provisions of Act 930. Altogether, shareholders, related and connected parties of Yuni Bank had taken out an amount of 5.3 billion cedis, constituting 75% of total assets of the bank.
So what's he saying here?
Okay. So essentially, Daniel, during the process of taking a loan from a bank, you're supposed to go through some processes.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to go through some due diligence from the bank side. Essentially, they didn't do this, and they were lending to parties, as the governor said, shareholders, connected parties, without following due process. And it's simple. You are taking our deposits, you are giving it to somebody. You are supposed to do some proper analysis, some proper due diligence to get this money. And essentially, Yuni Bank didn't do this.
And the persons they were given to were persons who own the company.
Exactly.
And persons connected to persons who own the company.
Party.
You can understand how easy it will be for such persons to get money from the bank without going through the proper
Which
procedure.
shouldn't be the case in normal banking operations. There should be a fine line between what is right and what is wrong. And it's as simple as that.
Right. Philip, let's go on. But then before we continue, we would speak with, Madam Elsie Awadzie has joined us, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana. She's joined us now on phone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Yeah.
And good morning to all your listeners.
Great. Good morning to you from Ken Thompson, who is in the studio with us now.
Hi, Mr. Thompson.
Morning, Elsie. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
So in the first place, we've been going through the decision that the Bank of Ghana took, but generally, how did we get here from your perspective?
Well, good morning. As you heard from the governor yesterday, these 5 banks, being Yuni Bank, Royal, Beige Bank, Sovereign Bank, and Construction Bank, were distressed for a number of reasons. But, you know, the common thread that runs through all 5 banks were that they were distressed beyond redemption. They were distressed beyond rehabilitation. And they had struggled to survive after we had given them a chance to recover. And it became evident that they were not able to recover, and they were not going to be able to recover in the immediate term. As a result, to protect deposits that these banks held, and for the sake of financial stability, the Bank of Ghana had to take this decision to revoke their licenses and really to allow them to exit the market in an orderly fashion.
I realized with Yuni Bank, for instance, and we just read this out, the governor spoke about this yesterday, that there were some persons who took loans without proper documentation and took monies in without even recording them on their loan portfolios. At what points did this happen?
Well, it baffles all of us. So, as you know, we sent in an official administrator, the firm KPMG. We sent them in on March 20th this year. We sent them in because we had suspicion that the prudential returns that we were receiving from Yuni Bank were not adding up. And in fact, as of March, the last prudential returns they had filed with us were in December. They were required to file returns every month. So we had not received returns for January and February. And we could see them increasing their request for liquidity support every day. And we were getting alarmed. You know, what was going on? What are you doing? Why are we not getting returns? We got no credible answers. So we put in KPMG there. It took us a very little time after KPMG had been sent in to realize that there was a lot of things that had been hidden from the central bank. We found out, for example, that the balance sheet of the bank was twice as big as we thought it was, based on the December 2017 returns they had filed with us. So that is when we began to look deeper into this, you know, took a deep dive into, well, what's the asset side of the balance sheet looking like? What are the assets that they hold? What are the liabilities that they hold? And we found out a number of transactions that were not even well recorded. But then that led us to a trail somewhat of monies that had been taken out that were not properly recorded, properly accounted for, that had been used for transactions that were not in the benefit of depositors at all. So yes, depositors' monies were taken. Liquidity support was taken from the central bank, and all of these ended up in places that they ought not to have ended up in.
Yes, but then my question was, at what points did these things happen?
At what point in time?
Yes. What I'm really trying to find out is when we noticed this. We know that the assets quality review happened somewhere in 2015, and there was an update in 2016. Yes. So at what point did we notice that these things were going on within the banks?
Well, but you get the example of Yuni Bank. So they were caught up in the asset quality review that showed that, you know, they were in distress. And they had submitted a plan, you know, for recovery. We were monitoring how they were implementing that plan, you know. But then in March this year, we were very sure that there was something very wrong with the bank. So we sent in an official administrator. And as I was just saying, it was then that we began to find out what had really happened. Okay, so over the 90 days or so that the administrator was there, that's when we really got to the bottom of this is really what had happened. And it had happened over a few years. And slowly had brought the bank on its knees to a point where it was beyond rehabilitation. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really, we went in March because for as long as the bank was under the control of its shareholders, you know, and its directors and its managers, they were telling us what they wanted to tell us. We were not getting to the bottom of the whole story. So it wasn't until we put in an independent official administrator in March. That's when we really got to understand the true state of affairs with the bank.
Right. So if I'm to understand what you're saying, we could not have known before March?
Who could not have known?
I mean, the banking supervision, yes, the supervision division.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that we require the banks to provide returns every month. They are under strict obligation to be truthful in their reporting to the central bank. We also conduct what we call on-site examinations. And so we have a schedule for all of the banks. We go in, we check books, we check numbers. But to the extent that the bank is under the control of its shareholders, directors, and managers, they can choose to give you another set of books. They can choose to tell you what they want to tell you. You can go and do your examinations. But, you know, they can, truthfully, banks are required to let us know the true state of affairs. That's why we license them. We license them, and they are required to tell us the true state of affairs. And we go in to do our on-site examinations. We look at books. We question them. We engage with them.
Which is how...
I beg your pardon?
Yeah. I was just trying to put this in context. It's to one of these on-site examinations that you found out about this 161 million with Royal Bank.
Yeah, so we've had there's been a number of things. There was the asset quality review. There was our own on-site examination.
Right.
And there was the official administration. That is really when we got control of the bank through the official administration to really understand the true state of affairs. And that's when we really discovered that what we knew was nothing compared to what the true story was.
Does that mean that for any other bank operating in Ghana at the moment, there is no way of knowing if something like this is going on unless we go and take over that bank?
No, but that's not the truth. I mean, the truth of the matter is that banks are supposed to truthfully report to the central bank. Banks are supposed to put in place boards of directors and managers that have integrity, that are fit and proper. And so when they tell the regulator this is the state of affairs, we can trust them for it. But it doesn't end there. We look through those numbers, and when those numbers don't add up, we pick a few things up. In addition to picking up things from the submissions they make to us, we send our teams out there, as I explained a few minutes ago. We have what we call the on-site examinations, where we have people there for a month or more, going through the books vigorously.
But then again, ma'am,
if a bank decides to deliberately hide numbers, okay, something triggers that. You can hide that forever. So at some point it catches up with you because we constantly monitor these banks, and it all has to add up. Something is going to give it away. So it's not as though if someone is hiding things, we won't find out. We will find out. Something is going to give it away because we're monitoring them. We're monitoring the entire financial system, and there are going to be red flags. And so based on those red flags, we could put in an advisor. We could put in a special auditor. We could put in an official administrator. We do have tools. And all of it I'm saying is that when we find that things went right with Yuni Bank, we very quickly put them in administration and then got to the real bottom of things. So it is, we get to know eventually. We get to know because something...
But how soon do we get to know? That's the issue. Because then again, this is about the confidence that people will place in the banking sector, considering the large percentage of Ghanaians who already do not trust banks in the first place. So for someone else there listening to us, what guarantee do we have that there are enough? Because you know that people can hide their financials. You know that people can decide to give you false information. So what checks do you have, and what checks have you applied in the past to make sure that if something like this happens, you can see beyond what the bank is telling you?
Well, Bank of Ghana, like I said, has tools. We have tools by which we monitor these banks very vigorously. The question becomes whether the Bank of Ghana is prepared to exercise that function as the law requires it to do. And this current management of the Bank of Ghana has made it very clear that on our watch, we are really going to ensure that we're doing what the law requires us to do, which is to keep depositors' money safe. And we keep saying this, that this is a mandate that we do not take lightly. And on that basis, we are going to make sure that our supervision departments do what they are required to do. Strong supervision, strong monitoring of these banks, looking through the numbers, not just taking it on the face value, and making sure that very quickly we take remedial action if needed.
Well, then again,
we're doing this. We have said time and again, we have strengthened our supervision department. We continue to do that. The industry itself also has been given a new set of directives to comply with. We have new corporate governance directives in place. We're coming out with risk management directives. We're coming out. We're dealing with external auditors. So there's a whole lot we're doing to ensure that we do not have weak supervision. We have said, the current management of the Bank of Ghana has said, that we're serious about ensuring that we supervise these banks the way they are supposed to be supervised, and that the laws are enforced if there are violations, and early enough. Early enough, so that confidence and trust in the banking system is restored. And that's a commitment we make to the public today.
But then again, Ms. Awadzie, for the two new banks, for Beige Bank and Construction Bank, operations actually began under your watch in the year 2017. And we found that very serious statements were made by the governor yesterday that in the first place, the monies that they said they had, if I can put it in simple terms, was not available to them. So their capital was not available to them. That was under this administration of the bank.
Well, let me correct that fact. These banks were issued provisional licenses before the current management of the bank. What the law requires us, what our own policy framework requires us to do, is that soon after 6 months or so after these banks start operations, that we go in there and do a fact-finding exercise, find out whether they started business on the right foot, find out whether indeed their capital is in place, find out generally how they're doing. So on the watch of this new management, and in consistent with our commitment to ensuring that we enforce our own laws and our policy framework, we put in these special examinations. So these two or three banks that we recently began operations, we went in early this year to go in, as our law requires us, to see how they were operating, to see how they were functioning. We began to look closely about, so by the way, where's the capital that you said was available to you at the point of licensing? By the way, you claim it's invested in your name with another institution. How is it invested? And are you able to assess it? Are you able to do business with it? Is it fully available to you? Is it unencumbered? So we began to ask those hard questions. And you'll be surprised of course you're not surprised now, but that led us into what is now public, the fact that, well, all was not as good as it looked. And so we began to engage them very early on, when we found these, to say, this is what our findings are, tell us how this came about, and very quickly try to make amends because you hold deposited funds.
Right.
That is of utmost interest to us.
Right.
So we realized that wasn't working as well. And in the interest of depositors, we decided that these banks didn't have the requisite capital. And we're talking about not having 120 million, which is the required capital they ought to have had in place at the point of their licenses.
Right. A number of concerns have come up since the issue with the banking sector began with the UT Capital Bank issue sometime last year, August. A lot of questions have been raised about supervision issues and what the Banking Supervision Division has been up to. For instance, in the year 2012, there was a High Court ruling, which I'll be reading from, that the applicants knew all along that Onward Company, financial institution, was operating without a valid license. The applicants here being the Bank of Ghana. This is in the High Court in Kumasi. The first applicants also invested in the company for well over 6 months, and that it later withdrew its investments. Now, I'm just summarizing here, but then are these fears valid? These fears in the public that the supervision division is not up and doing as it should be?
Well, I think that I've addressed this in many ways this morning on this program. What I've said, and I would repeat, that we take supervision seriously. And the current management of the Bank of Ghana is taking great steps, going to great efforts to ensure that our supervision department is up and running and is working as it ought to. And we're holding them accountable to that. We believe even the banks themselves have noticed that the supervision department is working and that we will not allow them, to let banks go scot-free if they do the wrong things. We have made sure that the banks understand that the previous culture where they could get away with not complying with the law would not continue to be tolerated. And we have made that very clear. We have not tolerated that since the current management came in. You have seen signs of that. You have seen signs that the law is being enforced, the law is being applied. Banks are given opportunities to recover themselves if they're sick, as companies do from time to time. But then that's within limits. Within a certain limit, you can allow a bank to try to recover itself in accordance with a plan that is agreed with the regulator.
Right.
That is only within limits that we can tolerate for the sake of depositors' money. So we take that duty very seriously, and we want to make sure that depositors understand that the Bank of Ghana and its management is serious about protecting their money with these banks. Now, we're not just stopping there. We are putting in place systems, procedures, policies internally to make sure that a new culture of strong supervision, a new culture of fair and balanced regulation, a new culture of high accountability within the central bank is established and entrenched for the future. So that is something we're taking seriously. And all of these things you're seeing, including the measures we took yesterday, bear testimony to the fact that this is a new day for banking in Ghana. And we are building a new culture of strong, ethical banking where trust and confidence can be restored in the financial sector so that you and I can work hard and put our money in a bank and know that our money is safe when we want it. So that's what we are about. And I want us to focus on what we have done. What we have done is to build a new bank, a new indigenous bank called Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited.
We'll come to that in a moment, Mrs. Awadzie. We'll come to that in a moment. But do you think this situation that has come up with local banks will be different if government exposure to the banks and contractors were paid on time?
Well, government should pay its bills, as everybody should. So that's all I would say there. Now, let me say that in the case of these 5 banks, the impact of government not paying its bills, if any, isn't what was the immediate cause. In the case of Yuni Bank, I mean, they have said over the years and over time that government owed them. We looked at what was owed. Government confirmed through the validation process of the Auditor General that they owed contractors that were exposed to Yuni Bank to the tune of 428 million Ghana cedis. Government decided to take up that bill and said to give a guarantee to Bank of Ghana to say offset any liabilities that Yuni Bank owes you, Bank of Ghana, by 428 million because we have taken that debt. So that was settled. That did not make a dent. When you have a situation where about 5.7 billion Ghana cedis has been taken, of people's money have been taken out of a bank by shareholders, connected and related parties, then if you look at 428 million cedis that is owed by government, that even government has assumed and paid off, then it really is not something you can even begin to say had anything to do remotely with the collapse of the bank. So it's important to contextualize the problems. Government must pay its bills. Yes, it would help to clear up the bank's balance sheet to the extent that there are persons exposed to these banks that are owed by government. Yes, that's good policy. But that's in the realm of fiscal policy, in the realm that we expect, the Ministry of Finance to deal with. But let's just say that what we have seen with these 5 banks had a lot more to do with poor corporate governance, poor risk management, and just bad banking, period.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought it to this point of poor corporate governance, poor risk bank, but just bad banking. That's the expression that you used back there. These persons took out loans from their own banks without any proper documentation to cover it. What's going to happen to them?
Well, we have said that we will look at what is available to us in our armory, our regulatory armory. We may have administrative powers to declare persons no longer fit and proper to do business in the banking sector. We would, to the extent that we have appointed a receiver, we would expect that they would pursue any recoveries that they can pursue within the court system or any other means that are lawfully allowed. We would also be able to pass on all the findings of our investigation so far to the appropriate state agencies that are mandated to investigate and to prosecute if warranted. So what we know is that there is a lot of wrongdoing on the part of individuals that contributed to the collapse of these companies, and we will not stop at revoking their licenses. We would ensure that we pass on to the appropriate quarters what needs to be followed up through, and we will leave judgment.
You said you are passing on these documents of investigations done so far. When is this handing over being done? Who are you handing them over to?
Well, that's still work that's ongoing. Like I said, we've just appointed a receiver yesterday in the person of Mr. Nia Manodoju. We're going to be working with them so that they can pursue all the civil options that are civil law options available to them, going to court and all of that. They would also take steps to report to the appropriate quarters, guided by the findings of all the reports we have so far, so that the appropriate agencies take up these matters. When we're going to do that? As soon as possible.
But the two can happen concurrently, no?
Yes. So I'm not saying that they're going to be done sequentially. I said all of these things are going to happen. And what those state agencies do, that will be up to their own judgment. But we will hand over what we have to them.
That's what I want to know, as in when that will be done, since you say that we can continue.
Maybe I should go now and do that. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it, trust me. And in the case of UT and Capital, we did it. We handed over to EOCO and other state agencies. They have pursued investigations. They have pursued, interviews and many other things in the pipeline and things they've done already. We're going to.
So these persons will be prosecuted?
I don't know. We don't prosecute. And we don't make the judgment as to whether anyone should be prosecuted. All we do is to say these matters are matters that we can have the receiver go to court to recover on. These other matters seem to be such that they need to be looked into with a view to establishing whether there's a case for taking any criminal action. And we don't make the judgment on that.
Will they be banned from banking again?
Would who be banned from banking again?
The persons who have been named in this report, the shareholders and the directors who took money.
Under our administrative remit, we can come to the judgment that certain persons are no longer fit and proper to conduct business in the industry. And if it comes to that, we will do it. And this is all part of measures. We have taken these first measures yesterday. It was important we did that. We're ensuring that there's a smooth transition to the new bank, Consolidated Bank Ghana, and that all depositors have full access to their monies and continue their normal banking business with this new bank. And then we're going to be looking at what do we do with all these people. But you have my word on that. We are going to do the best we can to ensure that we do what we can do within our administrative powers, and then whatever else is beyond us, we pass them on to those quarters.
At what points do we know if these persons who took out monies without proper documentations, like you said, people's salaries and what have you, at what points do we know if they are not fit and proper to...
Fit and proper. We will make that public, as we always do. We will publish a notice when we get to that point. Okay?
Right. So, finally... ma'am, for the new Consolidated Bank that is coming up, we understand that government is going to offload it to the ordinary Ghanaian in 2 years?
Well, yes, that's government's commitment. It's a new bank that has been licensed with 450 million Ghana cedis, fully owned by government, and backed by a 5.7 billion Ghana cedi bond to ensure that all the liabilities of this new bank are covered. And so the bank is a pretty strong bank. It's been run by very seasoned bankers appointed by government and approved by the Bank of Ghana. And we expect that this bank will be a strong indigenous bank to help really with our efforts to strengthen and make this banking sector a more resilient one.
Ma'am, about this 5.7 billion cedi bond that is being raised, the government mentioned yesterday that it will not be on our fiscals as a nation. How is that? How is this bond being raised? Who is paying for it? And how is it not on our financials?
I think the governor was clear about the fact that it is part of government's fiscal cost, and it will be part of public debt because it's government's debt. However, what he did mention is that in terms of the IMF program, this bond will not be seen, it will not be taken into account in assessing Ghana's fiscal performance for 2018, because this is a one-off emergency intervention by the government to save the financial system. Okay? And it is important, and the IMF sees this as a one-off exceptional expense that needed to be done in the interest of financial stability. And so what the governor said was that while this is part of government debt and will be reported as such by government, it would not be considered as, in considering how well the government has performed on its fiscal policy for 2018.
Okay. So if I'm to understand what you're saying, the IMF will not put this on government score sheets for 2018, but basically it's government's debt.
It will not see this as, for example, a breach of fiscal target, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Because it was an exceptional intervention that needed to be done for the sake of the financial sector.
Right. Thank you very much, Elsie Awadzie, for your time this morning.
Well, thank you. And let me just end by again assuring all your listeners that Consolidated Bank Ghana is alive and is in business and has all of your deposits. And so all of the branches of the 5 banks, the 5 closed banks where you did business, all of these are still open, and you can go there and conduct normal banking business under the control and in the name of Consolidated Bank Ghana. So that's the only difference.
Well, Ma'am, I just actually saw a message from one of our reporters who is on site at one of these banks' branches, and they are closed. He said that all the banks...
Well, they're closed. That's what I'm saying. I said they're in business, but they're closed until, I think the message had gone now. They're closed till 1 p.m. Message, the new bank already sent messages to all the customers of the 5 banks to say that they're doing an inventory. When you take over something, you do a quick inventory. What's in, how much cash is at this ATM and all of that. And so you need to do that. You need to do that cash count and make sure you're ready to open. And so they're opening at 1 o'clock. So and I think that a message went out last night, has gone out this morning as well. All of the customers have received messages from the new bank, from Consolidated Bank, saying that your money is safe with us. And I'd like to reiterate that. We just need a few hours to take stock and to start business so that there's an orderly start to business.
How about staff of the bank? What does the future hold for them?
The staff of all the 5 banks have been transferred to the new bank. So as of today, they're staff of the new bank.
But
so
surely...
You would walk into the branches that you're used to operating at, and you would find the same people there, although they're now employees of Consolidated Bank.
But surely in areas where, for instance, Yuni Bank had a branch right next to Royal Bank, we may have to close one of those branches down.
I will not necessarily prejudge that. The new bank will have to take stock of all of its branches and see how to make them all stronger and streamline them at this point. But that is a judgment that will be taken by the new management of the bank. But the idea is to make sure that access to financial services is not curtailed. The idea is that, the bank is strong, the bank is operating in as many places as possible, and that customers are not, are not disadvantaged in any way.
But like it happened with UT Bank and Capital Bank, people will lose jobs.
Well, I don't know why you're prejudging that. I mean, as of today, what we have told you and what's the truth is that all of these employees are now employees of the new bank, and so they have jobs as of today. This is a situation that we have carefully managed. I mean, these banks had collapsed, and really, if the government had not come up with this rescue plan of setting up a new bank to take over all deposits and all employees, the jobs would have gone with a collapsed bank. But the government has set up this new bank and said, transfer all employees to this new bank. And so all of these employees have jobs as of today. Isn't that good? So they're all employed by Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. They all have jobs. They're going to be running all these branches so that customers have full access to banking services.
Elsie Awadzie, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so she's the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, giving us a lot to chew on this morning. Elsie Awadzie there. We are here in the studio. It's 20 minutes to the top of the hour. We are here in the studio with Ken Thompson. He's the head of Dalex Finance, and Phillip Thompson is still here. Let me come to you, Mr. Thompson. Your thoughts on what has happened so far and what you've heard from the Bank of Ghana.
Good morning again. This morning, I woke up. Actually, I was feeling very great. I punched the air. Dalex Finance is growing. We really are growing. We are hiring. We just had a sales conference of 1,500 people. And for the first time since I've been involved in the finance industry, I've seen a team at the Bank of Ghana prepared to deal with the issues. And, I don't think any of us, sort of really appreciate how serious these issues are. And, for the last few years, there have been rumors flying around. Flying about financial institutions that were weak.
Right.
And you heard names, and it undermines confidence. And people forget that there's a direct relationship between people saving, people investing, the economy growing. And so I congratulate the governor. I congratulate. But I only give him 48%.
48%?
Yes. I probably was going to give him 35, but I got him 48%.
Mr. Thompson,
yes.
I want you to break it down this 48% for me, but let me take these important messages. When I come back, we'll go into your marking scheme, and they will understand. Our guest this morning, Ken Thompson, will be joined on the line by Sydney Casely, Hayford as well, and Phillip Thompson is here with Joy Business. This is the Super Morning Show. Stay with us.
It's a new day. Are you ready? So my girls and I are finally going on our long